Learn how to create a promise using only the resolve argument when failure handling isn't needed. Here is my boilerplate code, and we want to look at an example together that demonstrates how you can, you can omit one of the arguments that JavaScript provides for promise, and then extract out your result and pass it to the HTML directly. So we're going to be using the async and await method in order to achieve that in this particular lesson. So let's get started. The first thing that I need to do is that I need to make a function, and the function is going to be an async function. So I will need the async keyword, then function, and the name. So let me call the function name my display. And then inside it, I will make a variable and call it my promise. Now, new promise constructor is going to be called, and then I'll pass the function. And now, usually, JavaScript provides these two arguments to promise by default. So it's a predefined argument in JavaScript, and when you need it, you just call on them to undo whatever you want them to undo in your code. Now, out of these two arguments, one always returns success, and the other one is designed to undo errors or failure in your code execution. In our case here, we want to see how you can do away with the second one and only use one of the first arguments, which is the result, and leave the second one out, and then go ahead to get our output. So usually things like this are all is always done when you are certain of the outcome, or you are certain that a success is going to be returned for a process of what you're trying to do or achieve in your code. And if a task cannot fail, for example, let's say you hard code something, so you can leave reject out completely to keep your code clean, because you know that what you have in your code cannot fail because it's hard coded. Unlike when you are trying to achieve a dynamic, you are trying to work with a dynamic value, or you are trying to work with something that depends on network, and then maybe in the process of fetching, then there's a network collapse or a network problem. So in instances like that, you always want to make use of these two arguments, so that if anything should go wrong along the way, then the reject argument will be able to handle that gracefully. But in our example here, we want to add code the variable that we want to work with. So we are certain that 100% it is always going to come out as success. And as a result of that, you can then do away with the reject argument and use only the resolved one, which corresponds to handling of success in JavaScript promise. So I'll go ahead and remove reject and leave only resolve. And here inside it, I can pass in is random text. You can put anything. Welcome to Coachella. So now that I have this, I can just come down and say, okay, it is time to get this out on my screen. So this my HTML is what is going to receive it, and then I will pass whatever I get from that variable. I will pass it to await, and await will receive it, and then await will now pass it directly to our HTML to display it on the screen. But right now you're not going to see anything yet. That is because we have not called our function. We've just defined it, as you can see here, but it has not been called. And for us to be able to get the content of our function in JavaScript, you will need to always call that function. Now, we can see that we only define our promise with only the success part, which corresponds to the result that you can see here. So when when this code tries to run, by the time I call the function, so it will trigger success, and then it will now execute without checking for error, because we are actually not checking for error in this code. So The await here is what is responsible for unpacking the string here and use it to update our HTML, which is what is going to display for us here. So like I said, that resolve and reject are predefined arguments and they are built directly into JavaScript. You just name them and call them when you need them in your code. So in situations where your operation has no risk of failing, you do not need to include the reject parameter, and that usually happen maybe when you are hard coding something. Like an example that we are working with, you can see that we are hard coding this, and so 100% of the time it is always going to be a success. So it is the reason why we're able to do away with reject, because we know that it is always going to, you know, come out as success every time. So I'll go ahead and call the function now, and on my screen you should see welcome to Coachella. So this is to tell us that 100% this resolve is always going to be a success. Now, if you now look at what we have here, you might want to ask that does the order of arguments matter? For example, when you have usually we do have resolved and then we have reject after it. Now, if we now swap this as reject and then resolve. So you now might want to ask that, does this order matter? Well, yes, it matters, because JavaScript always look at first argument as resolve and the second as reject. So it always sees the first one as success and the other one responsible for handling failure or error. So if you only write one argument inside the parentheses, it will always act as a success function. So no matter what you name it, so even if the name is not resolved, anything you name it, just, anything you name your argument at the end of the day. So it's always going to, the JavaScript is always going to see it as a success. So look at it. You can see that I'm not even using resolved as defined by JavaScript, but JavaScript is still saying this as resolved and only changing the name. It is still the arguments provided by JavaScript to work with our code. So you have been able to see that here we have omitted reject, knowing fully well that our code is not going to fail. So we simply run our result, which is this, and then accept and then our await keyword grabs this payload instantly and then display it on the screen. So if I change this from resolve to maybe something like error, what do you think is going to happen? Well, you can see our values has disappeared directly from the screen. So I'll change this to resolve, and then our value will simply come back to what we have on the screen. So this is how you can omit reject as an argument in your code when working with promise in JavaScript, if you are certain that your code is not going to fail and 100% is going to return a success.